Let's do pending home sales, guys.
All right.
Weird from pending home sales. They dropped to the lowest level on record in January 2025. Now, this is the lowest on record. They didn't start measuring this till 2001. So we're now in we're entering the 24th year of this piece of data, and it's the lowest ever.
That's crazy.
Here we go, another record. Woo! But in the wrong category. Here we go, guys. Setting records once again.
Yeah.
So pending sales dropped 4.6% from December to the lowest level since the National Association of Realtors began tracking this metric in 2001, with more sellers cutting prices. But nationally, they're still higher than they were a year ago. So here we go with this whole, the price cuts are going to come. But it's okay, but values are still up. So is it just back to the value it was in 2024 or 24 and a half?
Slowly retracting back to what there was.
Yeah. So, I think that, they make the claim, weather is part of it. Yeah, weather might be part of it, but it's not that much part of it that I think there's going to be this massive boomerang in the spring.
Nowadays you're just trying to blame whatever you can blame, right? I mean, at the same time, it has been one of the coldest in, some parts of our country here. And it has some effect to certain things that are going on, but not to this extreme, right? That's where
when I was reading this, I was thinking to myself, if I'm a listing agent, am I telling someone, hey, don't list your house, it's gonna be cold next week? Okay, I'm not saying that to myself. So I understand in general the argument, but also when people gotta sell their house, they gotta sell their house. So I'm not sure I'm 100% on board with that. So obviously high mortgage rates or mortgage rates that remain elevated are contributing to this. But look, it feels like 1 week we talk about inventory and it's inventory is on its way back. It's surging back. And then we go, whoops, no, pending home sales, actually closed sales dropped to the lowest. What gives, guys?
Don't know. I wish I knew. I don't know.
That's a good question.
I'm confused. That's a good one. Are you asking me? No.
I'm asking because it's confusing, right?
No, it's very confusing, Andy. And I mean, a lot of this caused right now, the pending home sales. You got to remember, we're starting with the new president. I think all these things that is going on is just bringing a lot of uncertainty to the consumer. I mean, it's bringing me uncertainty as well, especially all the firings with the federal government, all that stuff. All this thing has an effect. It's going to kind of pause things. It's just going to let people really figure out, is this a need right now for me to go, or am I okay right now with renting? They got to try to figure that out and see where that happy medium is. So seeing that there's pending home sales have increased, for me right now, with all the uncertainty that's going on out there, I don't see that this is very uncommon. I think we're going to see more of it as we move forward.
That they dropped.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I feel like everything's just unthawing. I feel people that were looking to get in the market and that maybe halted because of the layoffs and everything, they're probably saying, hey, well, what's going to happen if I'm a government contractor, government worker, is my job on the line? So if they're in the process of wanting to, step up in basis in their current situation, that's something that maybe is hey, well, I don't know what tomorrow's look like, so maybe I have to stay put for right now.
So I'm glad you guys mentioned that. It's something that crossed my mind, but it's not mentioned in the article, right? So they didn't say it. No. And I don't know if there's an angle on that or not. I'm just admitting, okay, I was kind of thinking the same thing. There's a lot of uncertainty. People aren't sure. There are a lot of government jobs, and localized out here in San Diego. There's a lot of government and Fed stuff happens here too. Obviously, more concentrated in DC.
I was just going to bring that up. I'm going to look at DC as soon as the word came out.
But again, this whole uncertainty and not knowing, I can understand why some people would not list, and then that, or even if they did list, there's just less people. But again, we've talked about this a couple shows ago, it's inventory is up, way up from 2024. So even the fact that it's up, but then the pending sales, then there's ghost inventory somewhere, or it's just coming off the market. I didn't pull the stat of how many expirations there were, because expired listings, that might be interesting to look at and go, well, how many have expired and just haven't hit the market again? There's probably a big number in that, because obviously they're going somewhere.
Yeah. All I do know is our inventory is increasing. I want to say this week we left off at 642,000. No, I'm sorry, 639,000. Mm-hmm. A couple of weeks ago, we're at 632. So we've been seeing an uptick. Right. And this is the 16th week that we've been seeing, a good uptick in home listings,
which should translate into pending home sales, but they're not. So then I'm wondering, okay, then maybe they're just expiring and not coming back on, or something. I said
16 week, it was 16 month.
16 consecutive months. Yeah. Which again highlights the trench that it was in back in 2023. Yeah. So the end of 2023 was terrible. And then, that number 100% reflects that. So I'm hoping, this is kind of like my silver lining comment, is I'm hoping that this is the end of that, and that we won't have yet another new record drop in February. But I mean, this being kind of, again, still that same level of uncertainty, I kind of have my hopes up that it won't be, but I'm also like, I kind of have like one eye open, like maybe it's going to be even worse. I'm just not sure.
Yeah.
A positive meter for Andy?
Yeah, a positive meter. Yeah, I know. I feel sometimes like I'm just complaining about things too much, but also I feel like I'm also pulling some articles where I'm like, well, what do we do about this? Because it's hard to make sense of this. Because outside of people's aspirations to buy or sell for whatever their personal reasons are, it's hard to economically say people should do that. Because we also see with equity so high, it's the thing that's saving people from their own personal debt right now in a lot of cases. It's kind of their backstop. Thank you.
Need to refinance. You have a ton of equity.
Well, right, and if you can,
that's the thing that everybody's going through right now.
If you can do it, right? If because you have the equity, but can you afford what you're doing?
Of course.
And is your credit still high enough that you can qualify?
And at the end, I mean, it goes to worst comes to worst, I can always sell.
You can still sell. Well, and we're going to get in that because actually, I'm super surprised the foreclosure numbers are so small.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's an interesting stat at the very end of that I'm going to talk to you about that I noticed that they didn't highlight, and I did some math, and I'm like, oh, shoot, that actually is crazy.
Well, it's crazy. I mean, that just signals strong economy, strong job market.
It does, but does it? I think it's a lock-in effect that we talked about.
Okay.
I think there's that too. Because overall, average home price or home cost per household is still low. New acquisitions are really high.
Yeah.
But people who refinance in 2020, 21, 22, their mortgage payments are like ridiculously low because the rate's super low.
They're locked in.